At the family gathering with more than 50 people present, my mom lifted her glass, pointed at my sister, and declared, "This is the daughter who has always cared about us." She then added, "The other one has never helped at all." I had covered their home loan payments and paid their bills for nearly 10 years. I smiled quietly and walked away. The following morning, I found 38 missed calls on my phone. The reunion was already lively as I entered the lodge. Red checked the tablecloths and buffet trays, which were warm and inviting. Toddlers scurried between chairs, clutching juice boxes. Someone had hauled a speaker onto the porch and was playing Fleetwood Mac so loudly that the windows shook. It felt chaotic, noisy, and comfortingly familiar. For the first time in ages, I allowed myself to feel hopeful. Faces lit up when I greeted them, and someone kindly offered me sangria. I noticed my dad near the distant table, laughing as if a warm memory had just come to mind. At that moment I thought, maybe this will turn out all right. Maybe it will not be flawless, but at least nobody will cry in the car ride home this year. Megan was wandering through the room wearing a white sundress, bare feet, radiating like an ad for lemon bars. She held a frame wrapped in tissue and tied with a small ribbon, which I did not pay much attention to. I had brought a present too, a reservation for our parents at that fancy French restaurant they often mention but never visit. I slipped it beneath their dinner plate before they sat down. That was how the evening was meant to unfold. Quiet acts of kindness, sharing a meal, a few awkward embraces, nothing extraordinary. But then, Megan rose to her feet. Someone handed her a microphone. Why, I will never understand. She let out a sweet little laugh as if to say, "Oh dear, I never planned to speak." Which, of course, meant she had practiced it for many days. "Sorry for interrupting," she declared, clapping her hands twice as if trying to quiet a group of restless children. "I just have a small something for our wonderful parents." Turning around, she extended a picture frame to her mother. Inside, there was a collage of photos showing the three of them together. Vacations, birthdays, and random selfies taken on the porch. There was no place for me in any of those images, not even at the edges. My mother blinked in surprise and then smiled softly. Slowly she stood up, lifted her glass and said, "This is the daughter who has always loved us." A few people applauded, and someone murmured in admiration. Then, speaking louder now, she added, "The other one has never lifted a finger." Suddenly the room fell silent. Someone coughed. A fork clattered onto a plate. I did not glance around, but I could feel the shift, the bewilderment, the sudden need to act as though those words were never spoken. I kept my lips sealed, did not shed a tear, did not demand to know what on earth she thought I had been doing all these years. Instead, I gathered my bag, walked to the exit, and left quietly. No drama, no outburst, no voice from Ray. Just a strange, deep clarity that if I stayed one more moment, I would never forget the sound of everyone failing to stand up for me. I drove home in complete silence. It was a journey of 2 hours from the lodge where the reunion took place. No music playing, only the endless blur of the highway. Lights flickering, and a silent list forming in my mind. How often had I sent them money? How many bills did I pay so they could survive a tough month? How many birthdays did I skip working extra hours so their home stayed safe? I managed their mortgage. I covered their expenses for 9 years. Yet, in front of 52 people, I ceased to exist. But okay. I smiled and walked away. 15 hours later, 38 missed calls awaited me. The next morning brought the same number again. They began calling around 6:17 a.m., which felt daring given that no one seemed to care where I left the night before. The first ones came from my mom, then a couple from Dad. Then the astonishing detail, 14 from Megan. 14 calls from the girl who had not reached out in months unless she needed help with her taxes, suddenly acting like a telemarketer. I made a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen counter's edge, and watched the screen glow with every incoming call. Finally, I answered. It was not kindness, but curiosity about their opening line. "Oh, thank God," Megan said. "We didn't know where you went." "Are you okay?" I took a sip. "I'm fine." "Well, we cannot get on the boat." "What boat?" she gasped. "The group tour, the small sightseeing cruise planned this morning. We arrived and were told it was canceled. Something about a declined card." "Ah, that's why." "The card on file was mine, but I canceled it." A heavy silence followed. I could hear her blinking through the quiet. "But why?" she asked. Mom and Dad were losing it because Mom had stood in front of 52 people and declared that I had never lifted a finger, I explained. So I thought, why not make it true? Another pause. "Okay, but the entire trip?" "Yes, the accommodation too. You booked their cabin. It was under my name. They do not even have a way back." "Well, then I suppose you will have to cover their tickets." "I do not have the money." "That's fine." I said, "You are the daughter who has always cared for them. I am sure they will understand." And I hung up. I did not feel proud. Not in the usual way. No triumphant rush in my chest. This feeling was calm after 6 years of silently wiring money, paying the mortgage, the electricity, groceries, even the dentist bill that somehow became urgent every 6 months. Silence seemed like the most genuine response. They did not even realize how much I had taken care of. Not really. And I never rubbed it in. I never said, "Hey, just so you know, this trip you are all enjoying, I paid for it." I did not need cheers or praise. I simply wanted to be acknowledged as someone who mattered. But apparently, a framed photo collage from Megan mattered more. You want to know the worst part? I was not shocked. That moment when my mom raised her glass and said, "This is the daughter who has always loved us." It did not come out of nowhere. It came from years of the same pattern. Megan was always the favorite, the star, the creative one. She made them mix CDs, high school memories and handmade cards decorated with glitter that ended up everywhere. They absolutely loved them. Meanwhile, I was the dependable one, the consistent one, the person who secured a stable job and relocated 2 hours away. The one who paid off her student debt and assisted Mom in refinancing the mortgage when Dad felt too ashamed to ask. They called her when they wanted company. They reached out to me when the water heater malfunctioned. She offered them her time. I provided them with money. Can you guess who received the better attention? It was not always such an uneven balance. Back in our childhood, they used to say, "You girls are so different, yet both remarkable." That changed roughly when I was 24 and started earning enough to cover expenses they could not. By that time, Megan was frequently between jobs, dabbling in acting, then teaching yoga, then crafting jewelry. She lived at home for almost 10 years after finishing college without paying rent. They claimed she was finding her path. I once covered the property taxes so the house would not go into foreclosure. You would assume that meant something. The truth is, I never demanded repayment. I never expected them to compose poems or celebrate me publicly on social media. Yet when I stood at the reunion and heard my mother praise Megan like she had conquered impossible challenges while I stood nearby, something inside snapped. It was the way everyone nodded in agreement, the way no one looked puzzled. That was the breaking point. Nobody hesitated because to them, it all seemed perfectly reasonable. Naturally, it was Megan who had always been there. Naturally, I was the one who never made any effort. So when I arrived home, I powered on my laptop and began canceling everything. Every automatic payment, every recurring transfer, the mortgage assistance disappeared. Groceries covered. The gas card I clear every month got cut off. The bank account I used to send them money whenever their heater broke again was shut down. Even the dentist bill due the following day, I let it go unpaid. This was not anger or bitterness. It was clear understanding. If I was invisible, so be it. But I refused to finance that invisibility. I could have reached out, explained all the details. Yet they had already chosen their side publicly. They would face the consequences privately. I did not receive any contact the next day. Not a single call, not one message, which was almost amusing, because obviously someone must have told them to give me space like I was a child pitching a fit over snack choices. Not a woman who had just been erased in front of 52 people after pouring 6 years of financial support into a home I did not occupy. But yes, give her space. That will surely fix it. By Monday, they were home again. I only discovered this because my father changed his Facebook location. Wonderful weekend with family. So blessed. No mention of me, of course, and still total silence. I imagined them stepping inside and noticing something was off. Perhaps the cable box would not work. Maybe the thermostat displayed a low battery warning. Perhaps the grocery delivery had not arrived. The automatic bank transfer for the mortgage, which usually happened first thing in the morning, had not gone through. I pictured my mother blinking at the phone bill, watching it bounce back, then checking the gas bill, then the water, and finally the credit card in my name. That card reserved for emergencies but somehow still used to buy concert tickets. It was not that I was spying, but I happened to glance at my inbox and saw the alerts pouring in. Failed payment, transfer declined. It was like seeing dominoes quietly falling, oddly satisfying. They must have contacted the bank because that afternoon, the joint account that I had allowed them to use for household expenses registered a login attempt from a new device, twice. After the second attempt, it locked itself automatically. Oops. Later that night, around 9:30, there was a knock on my door. I did not open it immediately. Instead, I stood in the hallway with my back flat against the wall, staring at the door as if it had eyes. Then I heard my mother's voice say, "Lauren." I opened the door. She looked exhausted, without makeup, her hair tousled by the wind, wearing one of those thin cardigans she puts on when she wants to seem delicate. My father was behind her, arms crossed, not angry, just silently present. "Can we come in?" she asked. "No," I replied, "but we can talk here." She quickly glanced around, looking embarrassed to be standing on my porch. "We just wanted to clear the air," she started. "I'm sure," I said. "What went down at the reunion? You mean when you stood before 52 people and declared I had never lifted a finger?" That wasn't how I intended it to come across. I tilted my head. It sounded pretty straightforward. "It was a specific moment," she said. "Megan had just handed us that photo, and everyone was watching her. She's been going through a tough phase. She always does. She's trying," my mom added. "You know how much she struggles and just wanted to do something kind. So you chose to declare that she was the good daughter, and I was what? An afterthought. That's unfair." "No," I replied. "What's unfair is paying more than $150,000 toward your expenses over the last 15 years, and being told I had never helped at all." Her expression froze. My dad blinked. I hadn't planned to say it, but once it slipped out, I felt relieved, like releasing a heavy burden. "That figure is real, by the way," I mentioned. I crunched the numbers. Mortgage payments, utilities, groceries, unexpected dental bills, and the time I cleared Megan's credit card because she was overwhelmed with stress. It all adds up. "We never asked you to do that," my dad said at last. "No, you didn't," I agreed. "You just allowed me to do it year after year." Silence took over. My mom stared at the plant beside my door. My dad seemed like he wanted to be anywhere else. Then she asked, "So this is about money?" "No," I answered. "It's about you standing in front of everyone, calling me invisible, and expecting me to keep pretending I'm not." "But we didn't. I never expected you to take it so personally." I laughed. And here we are. That was when her tone softened subtly, a change in the atmosphere. We just want to make things right, she said. We love you. Then perhaps you should have said that instead of rewriting the last 15 years of your life with a speech and a framed photo. She nodded as if she accepted that. Then she added, Megan didn't mean to hurt you. Those words were not hers to speak. You did. More silence followed. Finally, I said, if you came here to ask for help with the house, I'm not the daughter you knew anymore. Then I firmly closed the door behind me. 2 days later, Megan appeared. She rang the bell twice in quick succession, like she was in a hurry. When I opened it, she did not wait for an invitation, but entered as if it were still 2012, and she was borrowing my heels without permission. Do you know what you're doing to them? She asked. Calmly, I closed the door. You'll have to be more clear. They are panicking, she said. They told me the mortgage is due in 3 days, and they do not have enough. What? You did not even warn them? I raised an eyebrow. After Mom stood in front of 52 people and said I never did anything for them? She rolled her eyes. She just got caught up in the moment. Then let the moment pay the bills. You are being spiteful. No, I replied firmly. I am stating facts. You all said I never helped. I am only changing my attitude to reflect that. They do not have the money. You live with them. She blinked in surprise. You do not pay rent. You do not cover utilities. But you do. There was no time to create collage gifts or make a post about Self-Care Sunday. That felt unfair. The speech was unfair too. Megan looked as if she wanted to shout, but she was wise enough to understand it would not solve anything. They are our parents, she finally said. Are you really going to let them struggle alone? I replied, no, I intend to let you take the lead. You are the daughter who has always cared for them, remember? For the first time, I noticed her hesitate. Just a brief moment, a slight twitch at the corner of her mouth, a small crack in her composed expression. They need support, then get a job, she said, and left without another word. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in many months. Not because anything was fixed or apologies made, but because, for once, I was not the one carrying the whole burden, and I refused to lift a finger. They decided to go public. It started with a Facebook post, clearly from my mother. It was a cheerful group picture taken at the reunion with a caption saying, "Family means everything, even when some forget that." Then the comments began. She walked out because your speech upset her. Well, it was not even offensive. You only spoke the truth. If people get offended just by hearing the truth, perhaps there is a reason. No one mentioned my name. It was unnecessary. 52 people heard that quote. Most spent time on Facebook. Everyone noticed the photo. A handful of distant cousins left crying face emojis. One shared a somewhat religious meme about forgiveness. Not a single person inquired about what I had been doing all along. For over 15 years, no one questioned why the sightseeing boat, the cabin, and the group dinner completely disappeared as soon as I left. I wasn't tagged in the posts, but I noticed everything. A mutual friend sent me a screenshot accompanied by a shrug emoji. For a while, I kept quiet and let people say their piece. Then someone commented, "She was always somewhat distant, right? Not really engaged." My mom liked that comment, so I responded clearly. One post, no sarcasm, no opinions, just screenshots, bank records, confirmation emails, wire transfers, rent payment checks, texts confirming receipt. At the end, the total sums was highlighted so no one would get tired scrolling through years of details. The total included $48,600 toward their mortgage, $35,760 in household expenses, $21,240 on groceries, $780 for medical bills including prescriptions and copays, $6,850 when the roof collapsed, $17,950 for Megan's tuition, $1,810 for a car transmission. Repair last winter, $2,300 for a canceled family trip deposit, plus a dozen smaller expenses I stopped keeping count of altogether. I did not tag anyone. I simply posted it publicly, then closed the app and went to sleep. By morning, the original post had vanished, along with 3 other posts that had tried to defend it. Then I received a text from my aunt saying, "I had no idea you did all that. You've always been so quiet about it." From my cousin James came the message, "That's unbelievable. If I were you, I'd never talk to them again." My mother sent nothing, but from Megan came a message saying, "We need to talk." The next time I saw her, I knew things had changed. She had dark shadows beneath her eyes and a reusable shopping bag clutched in her hand. She appeared to have lost about 10 pounds, and not in a healthy way. "Can we talk?" she asked. I replied no and stepped aside. She entered the room as if it was not her first visit. She said matter-of-factly, "They forced me to get a job," as if reporting some terrible event. I answered, "Welcome to adulthood." I was serious, just like Lauren was. She dropped the bag onto the counter. Inside were canned soups, instant noodles, a few generic paper towels, but no fresh fruits or vegetables. She explained, "They said I had to help now because you are gone, and apparently you were the one who kept everything running." Her voice faltered midway. She repeated, "They said that." Suddenly she realized what she had just admitted aloud. "I mean, not in that way, but they are having a hard time. They chose you, Megan, at the reunion in front of everyone. You were always the daughter who cared about them." She added, "I was just trying to be kind." "I didn't expect Mom to say that," I pointed out. "And you didn't correct her." She answered, "I was caught off guard." I said, "No, I think you liked it." She did not deny it. "They need support," she insisted. I told her, "Then offer them that support. I cannot afford everything." I looked at her carefully, really studying her. Her hair was untidy, her blouse wrinkled, her arms thin. She was not resting or nourishing herself properly. She was falling apart. I said firmly, "Try harder," and shut the door behind her. This time they came together. My mother, my father, and Megan stood with their shoulders drooped like children waiting outside a principal's office. They did not knock first, but just lingered by the bottom of my staircase. I stood on the porch steps until I caught sight of them through the window. I opened the door but did not invite them inside. "We are sorry," my mother said, her voice quiet and older than I remembered. My father remained silent. Megan looked defeated. She did not even try to fake a smile. Her eyes appeared empty. Not angry, just exhausted. "We should not have said what we did." My mother continued, "It was foolish. We did not think." "No," I replied. "You did think. You just did not believe it would cost you anything." She glanced downward. "It happened in the moment." Megan said, "You know how Mom gets." And I admitted I liked hearing that. "That is on me." "I know, but we did not mean it." My mother added, "Not really." I nodded. "It does not matter now. You made a decision. You have to understand." "No," I said. "You need to understand. You told 52 people that I had never contributed anything to this family while I was still paying your mortgage, your bills, while my name was on your insurance, your utilities, your everything. I paid $147,000 to be erased." They stayed silent. "And now," I said, "you get to live with that." My mother swallowed hard. My father looked away. Megan stared at her shoes. Silence. I waited for a fight, an emotional plea. But there was nothing. Just 3 people who finally recognized what they had lost. "I am no longer angry," I said. I am simply done. And I closed the door. Several months later, I heard Megan moved out. She lasted longer than I expected, but in the end, it became too much. The bills, the errands, the late-night calls, all caught up to her. She moved to a smaller place located much farther away and did not leave any forwarding details. Shortly after that, my parents decided to sell the house. This was the same house I had spent 9 years helping them keep from falling apart. The very house they claimed I never made any effort to protect. They accepted whatever offer they could and quickly downsized their living situation. Now they reside in a rental apartment with thin walls and flickering lights. I learned this from my cousin who happened to drive by recently. I never returned there. Not out of anger, but because I have moved on entirely. Some people believe family bonds last forever. Others discover through experience that these ties often depend on conditions. Did I push things too far or perhaps not enough? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe.